Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Habitual Growth Podcast. As always, I am Nathan and this is Lisa, and this is the podcast where excuses come to die, discipline is built, and lives are changed. What we want you to take out of this podcast is several action items. Every episode, we drop in some nuggets, some tips, some tactics that you can apply to your own daily life, even if it's not the same thing. Ultimately, we want you to take action, not just listen and consume the material. So that way, you're setting yourself up for success, you're driving towards personal excellence, you're doing more, you're being more, and of course, you're living more at the end of the day. And Lisa, we've got some really interesting topics coming up for the rest of the year. But before we get to that, I just want to remind people everything that we talk about on this, you should be taking it, downloading it into your Habitual Growth app, putting it there on a daily basis, because our essential actions that we set ourselves up with and we talk through, whether that's a goal, a behavior, a habit, all applies. You can get yours now on both the iOS and the Play stores. With that, note in there, let's really talk about intentional and purpose-driven, like parenting, motherhood, fatherhood, and really what that means. You've got some older kids that have transitioned out of the house. They're now in college. They're doing internships and things like that. They're really, you've done a really good job of like building them up to be the young adults that they are. You also have somebody at home. I, on the other hand, just slower approach, and I've got 3 little kids at home. So I'm interested to hear kind of your tactics versus mine, really how we drive all of our parenting with intent, because I think it's safe to say that obviously as found habitual growth, this is a really important element and a topic for a lot of people out there today.
Yeah, I think so. And I think from my perspective, it varies a little bit depending on what phase of life your kids are in, right? So I would say, yes, mine are older. And when they were little, there was still an element of purpose driven parenthood, but maybe not as goal focused as much as it was around how I wanted to show up. So, how I was being present, the efforts I put into being the best parent that I possibly could, versus as the kids got older and into a place where they could understand the concept of personal development and working hard and delayed results and gratification,
Mhm.
the conversations began to shift towards what does it mean to set a goal for yourself? Whether that's, Burke, who's 11 in a sports game, to, my daughters who are now in college. And what goals do you want to set through your collegiate career? Is it an internship? Is it, involvement in research? Is it straight A's or getting involved in certain clubs? Whatever it is, how are you crafting that goal? And then how are you building the roadmap behind it? So I think over time, because I've had a little bit more runway than you, I've been able to see the evolution of when to talk about certain things, but the intent of how to show up and to craft your days with intention is something that I've tried to instill from the very beginning.
When did you make the transition with your 2 eldest into actually like setting goals and talking through maybe that strategy of attack? And I bring that up because I don't think, your youngest is there. With my kids, 7, 5, and 3. Obviously, they're not there yet. My eldest at 7, we're starting to talk about things like little goals, but right now I'm mainly focused on 2 things. One is, what behaviors do you need to learn? So if
Yeah.
it, hey, you're
Yeah.
studying for a spelling test, this is a daily habit we're going to do. If you're learning how to tie your shoes, we're going to spend 5 minutes every single day learning how to tie your shoes until you get there. When does that change to more long-term, more goal-oriented in terms of age for the kids?
I'd say probably for me, it was right around that 10 to 12. So the girls maybe a little bit earlier ish, just because I had launched into a full-blown corporate career by that point and started to pick up momentum from a career perspective as well. I've stayed home a lot more when they were younger, and so it really was intentional parenting
Hmm.
about, and purpose driven in the way that I wanted to be present and you show behaviors and actions that, I thought would mold them for the rest of their life. But once I really dug into the corporate career and kind of caught that bug of how can I be better? How can I build my leadership skills? How can I do some of the things that maybe they hadn't seen me explore before? That's when we started to bring in the conversation of you want to be a really good person. You want to craft your life with intention, and you should start to build goals around things that are of interest and of value for you where you want to go long term. And for Burke, same thing. I mean, now he's 11. We've started in the last year talking, primarily around sports and hard work and how do you want to show up and what could this mean, next season if you're putting in the time to doing practices now.
Yeah.
But it was right around then where it really became more of a closer focus that we started to introduce, which then became what goals are you setting?
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. And I'm glad you shared in that capacity. And I realized I didn't even share the second thing that as you're talking about. I think it's kind of the same thing. The other thing, and I want to get to this because I think what you don't say is also as important as what you do say, right? As a parent, I think sometimes you get into it and you think, my kid's going to grow up to be, the baddest person on the planet, right? Or the most charming or whatever this vision you have in mind for your kid. But at the end of the day, it is still their journey. And there
It
are
is.
parameters that you have. But even my 5-year-old, my 7-year-old, right? Like there are tough moments and they have to develop their own personality. So Bree and I are also very intentional of not saying certain things. We won't tell them, hey, we're going to go hike this mountain. And it's going to be super hard and it's going to take you 8 hours and, you're going to be exhausted and sleep so well. We say, hey, let's go up to that other ridge. Let's take our time. Let's get there. Let's tell some stories, whatever it is, and kind of let them feel their way while failing at the same time. And I found that to be tremendously useful, specifically when they are in their younger years, before they get to the point that I think you're actually talking about.
Yeah, some of that maybe not what I don't say, but like with Burke, like he went through a period of time a couple years ago where he was trying to make a baseball team and he tried out for multiple, elite teams and didn't make it. And there was a lot of hard conversations around, do you want to keep going? And what does that mean if you don't keep going? Is that how you want to show up, for your future teams? How are you going to feel about yourself if you don't get out there and try again? And doing it in a way that gave him the accountability to make the decision, but having those conversations like, "This is a pivotal moment, and while you feel defeated or you feel crappy about what's going on, or you feel like you've failed, there's a bigger picture, and let's talk about that." Ultimately, he gets back up and he tries again, and that's the behavior that you want to try to instill in your kids early on, and then that becomes, future goals as they get older.
I'm curious, how open are you about life's trials and tribulations? I know your history, obviously, but for the audience, we don't need to air all the dirty laundry. But I think really one of the things that I'm struggling with sometimes is I got pretty crass.
Yeah.
If Say will be like, oh, well, that's not fair. I'm like, guess what? Life's not fair.
Yeah.
And I try to explain it with a little bit more context, but I'm very open with her of like,
Yeah.
hey, you didn't make that team. Like, here are some things that we could have been doing. Kingston, he wants to play out for the football. He wants to try out for the football team, just like you were explaining about Burke and the baseball team. And I'm like, okay, well, we need to go in the backyard and throw some balls. Like, if this is a priority for you, then let's make sure that we're doing those activities. So I don't sugarcoat it too much, but at the same time, I really do direct them and say, hey, it takes work. It takes a lot of effort to get to these points with, to compete with all these kids that are a little bit older than you, or maybe have, innate or genetic skill sets that you don't.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say I'm similar, right? So I try not to sugarcoat it. I try to be a voice of reality. And I'll say that with a caveat because there are times when I'll ask, especially my older girls, do you want feedback or direction, or do you just want me to listen because you're trying to process right now and then you're going to figure out the next step? So as the kids have gotten older, I've tried to be cognizant about leaving room for them to have their own emotions and thoughts and think through things on their own versus me being the immediate phone call of, I don't know what to do. That being said, I say this is the way the world is. Like, you may not love it, you may have to work 10 times harder than somebody else. Do I believe that you can get there? I 100% do. And if you want help figuring out the path to get there, I'm here for you, but it's not going to get handed to you. You don't get to feel like life's unfair and give up, because at the end of the day, it's only you that's responsible for ultimately the life that you're going to create.
Yeah. And I love that because this topic obviously resonates with both of us, but even just for me and Bree and the family that we're creating, there's something really special about the intention. And in fact, Bree's been very good just going out and getting like parenting books and saying, hey, we have to read this. What type of parenting style do you want to have? And I'm like, I don't know. You just tell me what to do. But it feels good.
The
But the
good
point,
kind.
yeah, but the point is, right, even with kids, I mean, you look at, not to get political, but you look at some of the idle chaos that's happening in
Yeah.
places like Chicago, New Jersey, New York, and you're tracing it all these teens that are just going in, and there's just debauchery, and it's like, hey, the parents need to step up. But if you don't even start this from an early age, where your child is listening to you putting your child in like it doesn't have to be sports, but let's use that as the example, like a sports team where there is a coach, there is a member of authority that is directing them and telling them what to do. They're looking at their peers and saying, okay, how do I need to operate? How do I need to think to be better to compete? Because ultimately, we all want to be good at something. And to me, that intention of, hey, do you have art in your life? Do you have science in your life? Do you have physical activity in your life? Are you eating healthy? Like, there are buckets that we will check and make sure as close to on a daily basis as we can, not every day, but as close as we can, we're doing something that checks those boxes. And then we're telling the kids about why we're doing those certain things.
Yeah. And I would say the other thing that I've tried to share with my kids is when I'm wrong or when something hasn't turned out the way that I wanted it to, especially if it impacts them. So did I lose my temper? Did I not follow through necessarily in the time frame or in the way that I said I would? But then I talk about work a lot too. Like, hey, here's the things I'm doing that I'm trying to get better at. Or, man, some days are really hard because I walk into every meeting and the people are so smart and I just feel so stupid. And, here's but I think that's an important element because parents try to hide their insecurities or their failures or where they could have done things differently. And I've tried not to do that because we're all human. And I want my kids to understand that it's important to learn from things that didn't go the way you wanted them to. It's the right thing to do to admit when you're wrong and then right the wrong. And it's the right thing to do to continue to grow and set bigger goals, but also acknowledge the reality of when things are hard or where, maybe you're having challenges and what you're doing about them, because they will mirror their behavior based on what they see, to your point, as kids are growing up. And so if you never have those conversations, they never have the opportunity to experience that through you.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I'm glad you said that. That's exactly what I was going to say is like, this is why, when Andy says, the ultimate rebellion is personal excellence, and when we strive there, but we have to have the standards for ourselves. And, I think so for one, there's no right or wrong for parenting, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there is very wrong, right? Abuse and things like that. But if you're giving it your best shot and you truly are trying, and there might be holes in your game. Bree and I get frustrated sometimes when we yell at the kids because they're not listening, and like our tempers explode a little bit. And then we feel bad. We'll go talk to the kids. Hey, I didn't mean it. Like, we'll sit down and have that conversation. But I agree. I think that candidness is really important. Sticking to what you say, that level of integrity, that means something to us. We talk about it all the time on the podcast here, but our kids are going to see that. They already do it. Like, my kids, like, know when Bree asked them to unload the dishwasher, like, that's their responsibility. They're going to start doing it, right? But then they also get to enjoy some of the stuff too. Like, kids actually really like the structure.
Yeah.
It's not all chaos. Yeah, there's fun in there. Yes, you want to be playful, but the structure really does help them get into the routine of some of these things. So, I would just encourage anybody who's a new parent or thinking about becoming a parent. One, you can't replace being a parent. I think it's absolutely the best thing. But two, you also, it's like dealing with another adult to some degree, where it's like, give people the parameters, guide them along the way, encourage them, be transparent, be real with what's happening, but also let them fail, let them go out and develop their
Yeah.
personality without being too overbearing on them.
Yeah, and I think that maybe I would add one more, which is think about parenting as a personal development journey all of its own, right? You're not going to get it perfect right out of the gate. You have a human that you're raising that has its own behaviors, its own personalities, quirks and wonderfulness that come along with it. And so it's an ever evolving journey for both of you. So have that open dialogue, continue to work on yourself in that space, but then also continue to work on your relationship with your kids in a personal development lens, that it's not a destination, it's a journey, and you are going to continue to iterate and grow together. And ultimately, if you're leading with intention and you're leading by example and you are living in a way that makes you proud, you will instill those same things in your kids.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, audience, thank you for joining us. If you made it all the way through, this is awesome. This is a great topic. Lisa and I are not pros, but we're definitely parents. So if you have your own questions on your own personal development journey, reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. And then lastly, just on this topic, obviously parenting is very intentional for us. We truly believe in the nuclear family, and getting other people to develop with you along the way. And so we've got some exciting updates in the app that are coming in about a month. And there's something in the app related to this topic, which we're super excited about. So make sure you go download so you can be there and be ready for that update when it does push. And with that, Lisa, I'm looking forward to the holiday at the end of this week, and we will pick
Yeah.
up during the next session.
All right. Sounds good. Good to see you, Nate. Thanks.